Hey y'all, it's Andrew with Mossy Creek Mushrooms, and today I'd like to go over with you what we can do with our spent blocks, or rather how I take care of my spent blocks. I have a pile right out here by the back door, and I will show that to you now so you can get an idea, and maybe some of you other growers can sympathize with me. A nice lovely door. Right here I have a pile of spent blocks, and that pile will grow forever if you let it. The way that I keep my pile from growing forever is to have a weekly routine for getting rid of blocks. So some of the things that I do to get rid of blocks are excuse me, still got that chest cold a little bit and I'm fighting it. Some of the things that we do with our blocks is we sell them. When we sell blocks, we sell them for $1 a piece or $100 a truckload. And $100 a truckload comes out to anywhere from 100 to 150 blocks. If someone brings their trailer and wants to fill up their trailer and their pickup truck, I let them for $100. I mean, by that point, my blocks have already paid for themselves. I'm not really worried about having people take a little extra for the same amount of money. I mean, that keeps me from having to haul them off. One of the other things that we do is that we use them, and here in a moment I'll take you out and I'll show you our gardens and show you why we use mushroom blocks in our gardens and why I feel like it's really important to do so. If you're growing vegetables for your own consumption, or if you are growing vegetables for a market garden. If you're a market gardener, maybe you should make friends with a mushroom farmer. They are always looking for someone to take away their spent blocks, and it makes amazing soil. I'll show more about that here in a moment. Along the same gardening lines, we take our blocks, we give them to any of our employees, which we now have 4 employees and 3 owner-operators and 1 silent partner who all are involved in this business. I give away blocks to my family, I give them away to my friends, I give them away to my employees. Anyone who works here on a daily basis has, access to them. And we're throwing out, right now we're producing about 332 blocks a week, 12-pound blocks. And now they go in the garden and they lose a lot of that weight and they come out here, but they're still, most of the solids are still there. It's mainly just water weight gone. And these things will swell up with water when reintroduced with water. So they are great for being tilled into a garden, or even just layered if you're into lasagna gardening, and using those to hold moisture, to buffer your moisture. And they still have a lot of nitrogen left over, and that ends up getting, when that's rotted down, it creates a really rich layer. One of the things that I'd like to go over is your vermin problem with your blocks. Little dirty secret of mine. About a year ago, we had a huge block pile where I hadn't been trying to sell them. I hadn't been trying to take them off to the landfill. More on the landfill later, don't get mad at me yet. We hadn't been using them in the garden. We hadn't been doing anything with them. And rats took up residence in there. It seems like all of those empty spaces around the bags, all that grain in the bags, all that rich substrate, the plastic shelters them from the rain. It made the perfect rat habitat. So we ended up having to take that apart, and thankfully little Truffle and little Venture and my friend's dog Petey were really into those rats, and they killed dozens of them. And it became a big problem. So we had to fight those for a long time. Now, luckily, none of them ever got inside, but we were constantly fighting them outside. They ate all my cucumber plants. They destroyed my tomatoes, my peppers last year. They were really a nuisance. And so, thankfully, all the neighborhood cats, getting rid of their environment, making sure that we got rid of all the blocks, the dogs and everything, really took care of that vermin problem for us. And that's something all farms face, is a vermin problem at some point or another. And we're really fortunate that ours never came inside anywhere near the mushrooms or the production process, because I can only imagine what would happen if rats got into soybean hull storage. Sure, they would love that. So keep your vermin away by tidying up your space. Keep your space clean, keep it free of clutter, keep it free of food and shelter, and you won't have the same problem that I had. I'll tell you what, why don't we go sit outside? This is silly that I'm sitting inside when we've got such a beautiful day outside. Alright guys, so sitting behind me and beside me is some beds, garden beds that we have. This one right here is with the, that's right on top of the soil. The 7 beds that we have next to me are raised beds, and I can tell you that using blocks in raised beds is incredibly easy. Every winter my wife just piles the blocks up until they're towering over the sides of the bed, and then they rot down, and I can show you how well they rot down, just like that. Now, that dry, hard landscape of those raised beds doesn't look very appealing, but here in a moment I'll show you what's underneath. Real quick before we go over that, I just want to go over some more ideas for using or getting rid of your spent blocks. One of the big ways that we get rid of our spent blocks is by taking them to the landfill. When we take them to the landfill, we throw them away under food waste, and in a lot of places that would be a no-no, but in our county, thankfully, they have a methane production facility that they're building into the landfill. And so our blocks, because they have plenty of nitrogen left, can still have a good home and a good purpose in basically just fermentation and producing power for our local town here. So, also, these blocks are really hard, and a lot of stuff doesn't like growing through them when they're fresh. Oyster mushroom mycelium is known for kind of killing off plants that are living, and so one of the things that we started doing is using it as mulch, like in our tree rings and everything else, around our raised beds, so we can walk on it, so we don't have to mow between our raised beds, we don't have to mow around them or weed eat at them. And that oyster mushroom mycelium just helps keep all the weeds down, helps keeps the grass down, and you know, grass starts growing through it a little bit, just throw more blocks on top of it, and pretty soon it's thick enough that the grass is dead and we don't have to worry about it. Another thing to think about is insects. Insects love these spent blocks. When we had a composter going, it was always full of black soldier fly larvae, and I know a few people who use their spent blocks, their spent mushroom substrate, to feed black soldier fly larva farms, and they will eat those down in a matter of no time and produce frass, which is good biodegradable material. It's a good organic matter for gardens and growing plants in, and they will just churn it down to nothing in no time. And in fact, I'm thinking about setting up a small farm for myself to use as a fish food for our fish that we grow. So there's that. Along with the insects comes the idea that this mushroom mycelium helps produce a living soil. The oyster mushrooms are a primary decomposer, and as they decompose, they invite insects to come in. The insects feed off the mycelium, feed off the spent substrate, multiply in number, work the soil, aerate it. We find all kinds of red worms in our raised beds because of this, especially ever since we started using blocks. And it just kind of creates a living soil that you can just see. I mean, I've got a very old video on the YouTube channel from the early days that just shows, like, you know, a little brown ant, I think maybe pharaoh ants even, just living in our beds, that we always have beneficial insects going in our garden. Another thing to think about is, here, I'll show you, most of them are dried right now because we haven't had rain in about a week, but one more harvest. We throw blocks out, we churn them into a big pile. Our raised beds through the wintertime produce so many mushrooms, and we just eat off those because I think they're a better quality even than the ones that we grow, and we grow great quality mushrooms. But they're thicker, they have a better color to them, better texture. Now they're buggier, so I don't sell them to restaurants because they'd be spending all their time kind of picking through the bugs, but we don't mind picking through the bugs because, I mean, you know, it's just one person's dinner. It's not an entire restaurant's worth of people that we're cooking for, so that's something to consider. You know, throw them out and get one more harvest, use them as a living mulch, use them as a soil, feed them to start an insect farm, and use your waste to feed your insect farm. Just going over that kind of stuff. So let's get some B-roll going of everything that we've got. Put a ring around, makes it easy to mow. We hate weed eating. Hate it. It's the worst thing in the world. One of my first jobs growing up was to weed eat for a summer camp, and I loved the summer camp job, and I loved being the dorm dad for the boys' dorms because all the boys' dorms were along the lake, and I could canoe to each one to deliver their supplies and do everything else, and being on the water is like my favorite thing in the world. But that took about 2 hours of my time, and then the rest of my time was weed eating, like 6 to 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I know a lot of you watching this may actually have done that for a living and think, well, that's not too bad. I hated it. I don't want to do it anymore. So we try not to weed eat if we don't have to. So another thing that you can do to help your garden beds, if you so choose to do that, is to add bits of charcoal. We have our fires where I do, smoked mushrooms and stuff in the smoker. We always have these fires where we do stuff. I put small amounts of charcoal and ash into our beds. Never a large amount. You never want a large amount of ash in your beds. That can produce lye and kill off a lot of your plant matter. But I will mix this charcoal in here in a little bit. Take me about 5 minutes to do a couple of beds, and that charcoal just helps with the rainwater. I mean, it's very beneficial. You should look up the benefits of charcoal in a garden bed. But just look at all of that organic matter. Grows amazing tomatoes. Well, guys, it's a good day gardening. I've got a couple more beds to finish up, but I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. Just been out here for a few minutes, and the light is already fading, which kind of expected, but I know that with the camera, I need enough light for you guys. So, if you guys have any other ideas for spent blocks, please list them down below in the comment section. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and subscribe for more mushroom growing tutorials. So remember, y'all, keep spawning culture.